In all the epidemics and the pandemics that have swept the world, there are two factors involved in isolating the injured, isolating the areas where the disease is spread, or cutting communication with it. In this video, you are about to see the most dangerous epidemics the world has known throughout history and ways to face them. Starting with the smallpox, one of the most epidemics that claimed human lives throughout history. It is believed that it first appeared in Egypt about 3000 years ago. Smallpox spread in different places around the world and in different periods of time, and it claimed about 300 million to 500 million people. Europeans introduced it to the America in the 15th century and killed most of the indigenous population of Mexico. Some historical sources mention that the first way to treat smallpox was discovered in China about 1000 years ago, and others mention that the Turks were the first to discover it much earlier, and the Turks inherited this method until it reached Anatolia and was used by the Seljuk Turks and the Ottomans. Specifically in the 18th century, in 1721, Lady Mary Montagu, wife of the British ambassador to the Ottoman Empire, wrote a letter to her country in which she spoke about a method the Ottomans used to protect themselves from smallpox. It is taking some infectious substances from the skin of a person with smallpox and placing them in superficial scratches on the arm of the person to be vaccinated. This method was adopted in Europe after a period of rejection. Then this method spread to the whole world. Moving to the Black Death. The Black Death plague was the most serious catastrophe faced by humankind in the 14th century, and the most deadly epidemic and the ability to transmit and spread, as it moved quickly from China to India and Central of Asia until it invaded Europe and North Africa. The Black Death plague appeared in Territory 1 in China and moved from it to Central Asia, Eastern Europe and Constantinople, and from there to Europe and the Middle East. By 3049, the Black Death had spread to all European countries and cities and claimed hundreds of thousands or even millions of people. And by 3051, the epidemic had killed nearly half of Europeans' population. Some sources state that the number of victims of the Black Death is estimated at 75 million to 200 million, and caused great changes at the economic and social level and changed the demographics in Europe, especially with regard to the Jewish component, as many of the countries of Europe that were plagued by the plague were killing the Jewish population if they didn't join Christianity, because they believed that they were the cause of the spread of the plague in Europe. The Black Death also led to the disappearance of entire social classes of European society. Some countries, such as Spain and the Netherlands, attempt to control the spread of the disease and cut off any contact between them and the countries that the plague outbreaks, and suspended commercial exchanges with them, a step that is similar to the countries today, suspending air traffic to and from affected countries and preventing their citizens from entering. Italy, particularly in Florence, sought to isolate the injured in one place and to size the ships arriving there for 40 days before being allowed to dock in their ports and unload their cargo in a quarantine-like application today, and they have already managed to limit the spread of the disease to some extent. And now, moving to Justinian plague. The plague of Justinian first appeared in Egypt in 541 and may have moved to it from a known location, and then moved through the port of Alexandria to Constantinople, the capital of the Byzantine Empire, or Eastern Rome, during the reign of Emperor Justinian, and therefore the plague was called the Plague of Justinian, who was also struck by the plague but he recovered from it. The plague also spread to the Sassanid Empire, as most of the cities bordering the Mediterranean Sea, and some historical sources indicate that the Justinian plague claimed the lives of 30 to 50 million people, or about half of the world's population at the time. At that time, people did not take firm measures against the spread of the disease, which afflicted even street animals, and thousands of them died, and people neglected to bury them properly, which led to an outbreak of the plague more. The plague had major economic consequences worldwide, as it caused a total halt in trade between cities. It also impeded the efforts of Emperor Justinian to unify the lands of Eastern and Western Rome, and weakened then the power of Byzantium, which made it easier for other countries to recover their lands from them and even raid new lands and establish new states and kingdoms. Moving to the cholera. The cholera epidemic has struck the world several times since the 19th century, beginning with the Ganges Delta in India, and has claimed the lives of millions around the world. Cholera vaccine was produced in 1885, but the use of the vaccine did not eliminate the disease, and cholera continued to emerge and claim lives in separate countries. The World Health Organization considers that the seventh outbreak of the disease, which began in 1961 in South Asia, is still continuing. WHO data indicates that nearly 3,000 children in Yemen have died from cholera since 2016. Cholera is most common in countries and places where its population suffers from malnutrition or poor places that suffer from food and water contamination. It can be faced by improving their living conditions and improving the quality of health services. In addition to these epidemics, there are other diseases that claim millions of lives every year, such as cancer, heart disease, and diabetes. Although it kills millions of people, it is not treated as an epidemic that poses a threat to the world because it does not transmit infection from one person to another. In addition to infecting millions of children and killing hundreds of thousands of them annually due to disease resulting from malnutrition and poverty, the vast majority of which are in Africa. This does not receive international attention, nor is it highlighted by the media to the extent that occurs when epidemic spreads, despite the number of victims of some of these epidemics is very small compared to the victims of hunger, poverty, and wars.